Welcome back to another episode of Crazy Until Genius, the show where bold ideas that seem insane right up until they change everything. And I'm your host, Hunter Jenkins. Today, we have my brother, Porter Jenkins, on the podcast. Porter, thank you for coming.
Hermano. It's good
Hermano. I often say my older but less handsome brother, but we'll let you guys be the judge of that. So Porter Jenkins is an AI scientist and assistant professor of computer science at BYU, holding a PhD in computer/information science from Penn State, with research published in top-tier venues including ICML, ICLR, KDD, and AAAI. He brings deep expertise in deep learning, probabilistic machine learning, and real-world AI deployment. He's the co-founder of Delicious AI and the CTO of Enzy. Porter, thanks for coming.
It's great to be here.
Well, this will be really fun. We're going to get into a lot of topics. We're going to get into a deep conversation about AI, how it's going to affect the workforce, how it's going to affect sales, how it's going to affect all of the 20-year-olds out there. But first, let's start with the classic question that we like to open with. If someone wrote a book about your life, what would the title be?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, hopefully my life isn't over anytime soon, so maybe the book can still be written. But I think right now, if I could give it any title, it would be The Upper Confidence Bound. Okay. Let me tell you what that is. Do you know what that is?
No, I don't. I'm going to write that down. You win an award for the most unique name, The Upper Confidence Bound.
Okay, so The Upper Confidence Bound is an algorithm in machine learning and statistics, also called UCB. But it actually has a lot of tangible life lessons. So the basic idea of the algorithm is, if you're making decisions over time, the future is always uncertain. You can't know the future. And so you need to think about two things when you make your decisions. You need to think about, what's the value of the decision overall? How much reward are you going to get from that decision? And then also, how much uncertainty is there? And then the decision rule is, you should make the decisions that basically have the highest possible value, but also have the highest uncertainty.
Oh, okay.
And so it implements this principle of being optimistic in the face of uncertainty.
Very cool.
And the cool thing about it is it's provably optimal. So if you could basically live long enough, you would eventually converge to the perfect decision-making process in the limit. So, and honestly, that's how I've tried to live my life. Basically I've tried to take risks, and the advantage of this UCB principle is just that even if you don't make the perfect choice, the fact that you took that decision that was kind of risky, even if it's not good, you resolve uncertainty, you acquire knowledge, and then you learn. And so over time, you can basically learn and you can make better decisions.
I love the statistical accuracy and the personal symbolism colliding for that title. Walk us through your life and how you feel like that has helped you in your journey. That maybe in some cases you've been viewed as crazy, maybe by others or yourself, and trying to be really optimistic but really determined as well. I don't know, tell us your story there.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I can start kind of, especially on the career front. I mean, when I went to college, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. I knew I liked math basically, and I was trying to figure out how do I make use of that interest and kind of a skill. There's definitely people who are better at math than me, but I just liked it. I just like how it was, there was a right answer. Some fields at college, there's many answers, and that's frustrating. And so I was searching around. So I started in pure math. That felt a little bit abstract. I bounced around. I ended up doing statistics, which I like because it's kind of this fusion of, the mathematics and the theory, but the data from the real world. And so to me, that was really powerful. So I'm going through studying a lot of statistics, learning how to write some code as well. And then towards the end of my college experience, this kind of new and emerging field was on the scene, which is machine learning. So this is probably 2013, 2014. So the first time I ever heard the word machine learning was around then. And it was just this idea that you could build these really big statistical models to understand the world and make predictions about the future. And I thought that was really cool. And at the time, people were creating these crazy algorithms to analyze images, and it was totally game-changing. So I got really interested in that. I worked for a couple of years after school. at a startup called Visible Equity, doing a lot of similar machine learning analysis. One of the cool things we worked on was trying to predict when people were going to default on their loans. So the customers of Visible Equity would know how to manage their financial portfolio. So that company, Visible Equity, serves banks and credit unions. And so that was one of the first algorithms that I built. Kind of got addicted to it. Decided I should go back to school for another 5 years, which is kind of crazy, I guess.
I want to talk about school. We're going to dive into school in the changing landscape of AI. But yeah, keep going.
Yeah, so I was about 25, thinking that I wanted to go deeper on this whole machine learning thing, and so I decided to go do a PhD. Went out to Penn State, kind of bounced around on a couple of things. Ended up doing my dissertation on efficient ways of doing deep learning. So deep learning is kind of the set of techniques that powers modern AI, where you build artificial neural nets.
Sorry, let me interrupt you really fast, because like you're a very confident guy, and I admire that about you. When you went to go get your PhD, like you just said that very nonchalantly, did you ever doubt yourself that you could do that? Was that a risky thing in your upper confidence bound matrix, or is it a layup?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, I mean, it's super risky. I never even thought I would do a PhD. Like I was okay in school. Like I was not 4.0 student.
Okay.
You know, I feel like I worked hard, but you know, I was not the perfect student, and so it wasn't really on my radar at all. But I had a mentor who was one of the founders of that company, Visible Equity. He had a PhD in finance, and he was the chief economist there. And he basically told me I was smart enough, and
You should go do it.
I believed him. Maybe I shouldn't have.
No.
He talked me into it, and then I took that leap of faith and moved out to Pennsylvania. And then when I got there, basically for 5 years, I just had massive imposter syndrome. And to be honest,
Okay.
I still do. Like everybody, I think in my field has a lot of that. So imposter syndrome, if you haven't heard that term, is just this idea that, you know, you're in your job and you feel like everyone around you is better than you always, or that you're not good enough to be there. And so I'm there, and all my colleagues are super smart.
How do you overcome it, if at all, or how do you cope with it? Is it a good thing?
I think so. I mean, I think if you microdose on imposter syndrome, it's probably a good thing.
Little inside joke.
Yeah.
from before we were recording.
It keeps you humble, I think. You know, you don't want it too much, because I think that's challenging. You could be a little debilitating. But if you don't have, you got to have a little bit of self-awareness. If you're too confident all the time, then you can have blinders to things that you don't know.
So that's true. And I also wonder if you have no imposter syndrome, you aren't uncomfortable enough. So if what you're doing in the world right now, you don't feel like if you know you're the best and the smartest right there might be a bigger, better game that you could go play, right?
Sure. Yeah.
You also said something I just want to touch on. A mentor pushed you.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to circle back for the listener here. I feel like every single guest we've had on has had somebody who's told them, you can do more, you can be better. And so for people listening, I always like to take action items, because the whole goal is we take action items out of this podcast and we can be better. If you don't have someone in your ear, whether a friend or a spouse or a family member or a neighbor, telling you you should raise your standards, you got to go find that, right? And so for you, it was this guy, right? It was Taylor
Nadald, yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. I mean, I think everyone needs mentors, and they could be family, they could be friends. But I think the idea is, if you could just identify people, around you, they don't even have to be your best friend, but maybe friends of friends, or people that are kind of close enough or accessible, and just people you want to be like.
Yeah.
And just go ask them questions. They're almost always gonna answer them and be helpful and want to help you. If you take an interest in their life, they're almost always going to be helpful. And to me, that's been super valuable, and it was the differentiating factor in that particular decision.
Well, I mean, Taylor, thank you, Taylor, because without Taylor, Porter wouldn't have gotten pushed to go get a PhD and just grown so much. So anyway, sorry. Let's keep going through this. So you're kind of in machine learning. It's a new field that you're trying to become an expert in. You're in Penn State. You're around people who are just brilliant, growing. Yeah, and then kind of walk us through your transition from education to higher education with faculty, and then being an entrepreneur.
Sure. Yeah, so around that time, I'm in my PhD, just mainly learning the fundamentals of what AI was offering at the time, which is a lot. A lot of the breakthroughs that we're seeing in the last 18 months are directly attributable to discoveries that people had around that time. And so when you're doing a PhD, you have to come up with something new. It's a little bit like being an entrepreneur, in that you have to go create something new that basically has an impact on the collective sum of human knowledge. And so that's a challenging problem. And so I'm looking around at what can I do? I had a couple ideas, and I actually I found kind of a thread that might allow me to do the two things that I wanted to do, which was be a scientist and be an entrepreneur. You're my brother, so you know this. There's lots of entrepreneurs in our family, and so I had always wanted that to be a part of my life. But I kind of viewed this PhD as like a pit stop on the way there to deepen my understanding of kind of what I thought was the future of technology.
Yeah.
And so what I ended up doing was figuring out a way to write a dissertation and then leverage that into kind of this new technology that could be offered as a product. And so a lot of the work I was doing in my PhD, we kind of spun out and turned into a company called Delicious AI, which I co-founded around 2019 with several partners.
And really quick, like for those who might not know what the dissertation process is in this AI this PhD process, and you saying creating something new, and you correct me, but from what I understand about your education was, you have to come up with new ideas in a field, and then you have to pitch those ideas as true and valuable to a panel of experts who have been doing it for 30 years, right? It's called defending your thesis, defending your dissertation. Is that the right phrasing?
Yeah, that's basically the process. So you have to come up with a new idea. You have to experimentally validate it. It could be a theory, or it could be something like an algorithm, which is like a technique. And then you have to do that several times. And then all of those pieces have to go through peer review. So that's the process of you submit it off to peers in your field who are experts. They don't know who you are. You don't know who they are. And they just blindly review it, and they give you brutal feedback.
Yeah, brutal. I remember sitting in one of these with you, and it's brutal. They're mean. And so for those who are listening and maybe interested in a PhD, like I think it sounds like the refiner's fire.
Yeah, it definitely is. It's very self-directed. No one's telling you what to do. This is why I think it's analogous to being an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
When you start a business, you have an infinite set of possibilities. Every day you could do anything, and you don't know exactly what to work on, and you don't have a boss telling you what to do.
Yeah.
And so your goal is to build something that people will pay for.
Yeah.
And there's a million ways to do that. And so your challenge is, how do you refine that space of possible things you could work on into something that's really concrete in the here and now?
Yeah.
And so honestly, a PhD is the same process. You have to invent something, or you have to create new knowledge, or come up with a new theory that is validated by experts. There's a million things you could do. No one's telling you how to do it or what to do. And so you kind of have to figure it out on yourself, or by yourself.
And if I understand as well, you can't get a PhD unless you have an advisor basically claim you as like they'll be your mentor, and you're pitching. It's like Shark Tank for your education. It's not how you think of normal education, where you're taking class after class after class. It's like carving your own path.
It's totally different. So everyone thinks about school as like, you go to a classroom, you sit down, the teacher just tells you what to do. Maybe you memorize some stuff, you take a test, and then you're done. It's totally flipped on its head. It's the opposite, right? You have to come up with everything on your own, and then you have to get external validation. And that process, sometimes it takes people 3 years. I've seen it take people 8 years, or 9 years, or you fail out entirely. A lot of people don't make it. A lot of people quit. A lot of people can't pass that bar. And so it's fairly cutthroat.
That sounds like starting a business, right?
It is analogous for sure.
And so your book, The Upper Confidence Bound, we have this matrix of value and risk, right? Is that the right way to think of it?
Yeah, value and uncertainty. Those are the two things.
Value and uncertainty.
And then again, you want to choose a thing that has really high value and high uncertainty.
Okay, value and uncertainty. Yeah.
Because if you make the decision, even if the decision's wrong, you acquire information, you resolve uncertainty, and you learn.
So it seems like you probably picked up on those skills of how to navigate value and uncertainty in your PhD, and you've carried it through being an entrepreneur.
I've tried to.
What do you feel like? How do you discern value when it comes to something you've done in a PhD, starting a business? How for anyone listening, trying to discern the unclear path of value, what advice could you give us?
Meaning, what is value? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
I mean, it is subjective.
Yeah.
And I think you have to have some guiding principles in place to be able to answer the question. You kind of have to have some type of philosophy of life to some degree, because value could be just money.
Yeah.
That to some people, that's value. So you're going to choose the thing that is maximizing, future financial reward. I think that's important. But also in my opinion, there's other factors like, your family, your health, your mental health. And so value, I think, is a little bit multidimensional. So one other thing that came out of my PhD that kind of fits in with this crazy until genius theme, I think, is the idea that I went to a PhD married with a baby.
Yeah.
That is extremely uncommon among computer science PhDs across the world. I mean, there's very, very few people who are in that situation. So I'm in a research lab with a bunch of people I love, and they're all smarter than me. And, to be brutally honest, they're all foreign, they're all Chinese. And so I come in, I'm an American, I'm married, and I have a 9-month-old baby, and they didn't understand it at all. They literally thought I was crazy.
Yeah. Okay.
But I feel like, I was that part of the value equation is really important to me. Having a family, being grounded in, other people that I love and care about. I was okay trading off maybe some of the publication success or prestige that maybe they were seeing, because I knew that kind of I had a richer sense of what value was.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And I feel like in our society, people fall into the trap of like, I have to make it. I have to hit some milestone before I can like have a family. And again, this is like everyone's personal preference of when they do these things, how they do them for sure. But I think it's important that people ask themselves, what is actually valuable to me? And I like your distinction between, it can be money, and there's 1,000 ways to get rich. There's 1,000 different businesses, but there's other dimensions to it. You talked about health, you talked about family, spirituality, like picking what value means to you. And for you, having a family was a big part of that, and not being worried about being the best publisher. Is that the right way to say it? Like
researcher,
yeah. Right? Because I'm sure these other students, they just lived in the lab.
They did. My first day I was there, and I opened the door. It's probably 8 a.m. and I was so proud of myself for getting to the lab early. And I opened the door, the lights are off, and then I flip the lights on, and expecting to see no one there. I flip the lights on, and I look over in the corner, and one of my lab mates is asleep at her desk.
Wow.
At her computer. She had been there all night.
Wow.
And so that's kind of what I was, quote unquote, competing with. That's the level of dedication a lot of my colleagues had. And that's fine. But they are optimizing for one thing.
Yeah.
And I wanted to have a slightly more holistic view of what value was.
Yeah. And then maybe to dwell on this one, like just a little bit longer, because I think it's so easy to compare yourselves with one attribute of somebody else, but like everyone is a multifaceted being. And so maybe they were crushing it with research, but like weren't balanced in other areas of their life. Whereas you had like a wife and a kid at the time to come home to. So I just think like it's important you don't get caught up on these like singular comparisons when people are more complicated than that.
Yeah, at the very least, when I would get the reviews back and they would say how stupid I was and how much they hated my ideas, okay, I could come home and get a hug from my daughter and I would feel much better about myself. Whereas, my colleagues maybe didn't have that backstop. So I think you need to think about value to be a little mathematical, as a vector instead of a single number. You have several different dimensions of value. And to me, it's mainly, I think financial part is important. You got to take care of yourself and your people, your family. I think you got to take care of your body. I think that's super important.
Yeah.
And then I think your mental health, spirituality. Those are the 4 big areas that I try and put a concerted effort into when I think about value.
I love that. I love the multi-dimension of that. Before we dive into kind of the entrepreneurial side, because you're obviously doing some cool stuff right now, I want to dwell a little bit on AI. I want to dive deep here for a second, because this is such a great opportunity to talk to you about this. And I want the context of our conversation to be around a small story that I'm going to share with this young guy who came to my house to buy. My wife sold something on Facebook Marketplace, and this like 17, 18-year-old guy is at my house. And I'm like, hey, how is it being 17 or 18 right now? Thinking it would be exciting and fun. And I just got this horribly dreadful answer from this young man about the future. Man, he's like, I think AI is going to take everyone's jobs. I'm really worried about being drafted into a war. I can't buy a house. Like, can't find any girls to date. Like, I mean, he could have been more handsome for sure. But like, setting that aside, all of those things are true. He just had so much dread about the future. And so that's the backdrop. I want to talk to that person, and whoever's listening and is feeling like this angst and just insecure with AI, like, we have a great expert to help us understand what is actually happening, what isn't happening, what's hype, what's buzz. So maybe I'll start with this question. Over the next 2 to 5 years, how do you feel like the inventions in AI are going to impact the workforce? Maybe in particularly like the more blue collar, door to door type workforce.
Yeah, I mean, this is not a controversial statement. I think AI is a transformative technology, and I think it's here to stay. Now, that said, it's a challenging task to kind of sort through the signal and the noise and figure out what's true, what's going to happen. But nobody knows what's going to happen. Everything in the future is uncertain. And so, as we have this discussion about AI, I would probably just, again, call back to this idea of the upper confidence bound, which just implements this principle of optimism in the face of uncertainty. So I think there's a lot of reasons to be optimistic. I don't really see the scenarios that are really negative for everyone to have very high probability. Robots taking over the world and or automating all jobs. I just think that those are so unrealistic and not based on science, mainly based in science fiction movies from the 1980s, more or less. So yeah, how do I think about AI? I think it's a tool. And I think throughout the course of humanity, the thing that we're best at is inventing tools to help us work better, easier, and do more.
Yeah.
Whether it's a spear with a stone arrow on it, or whether it's a plow to produce more crops, or whether it's a steam engine to move things around, or whether it's a computer to transmit knowledge, or whether it's a neural network that can write emails and code. To me, they're all the same. There's different versions of the same thing, which help people be more productive, because at the end of the day, these AI systems are tools.
So I like looking at history to try to understand the future. If these are tools, and every tool that's been invented that raises the tide for all boats, the question is, well, how do you leverage these tools the best, right? Do you foresee the way people are educated from kindergarten to college, like, massively changing? Do you feel like principally we're going to stay on the same trajectory with that? Like, I don't know. Walk me through education here.
Yeah, this is a great question. I talk about this with my wife frequently, because I do think education should change. It's hard to know exactly how. So if we talk about AI, what it's good at, let's start there, and then maybe we can work backward from how we should think about education. So right now, AI is really good at tasks, at solving tasks where there's a lot of data, meaning there's a lot of examples that we can observe of how people perform that task. And maybe more importantly right now, tasks that can be reduced into a single true-false answer.
Yeah, okay.
So when I was telling the story about going to college, I was attracted to math, coding because I didn't love the idea of a professor being like, hey, you did this wrong. And I would say, well, why? And they'd be like, they kind of give me their opinion.
Yeah.
Okay. So I was attracted to tasks like math and code that are either true or false.
Yeah.
They are binary by definition. And actually, the interesting thing is the reason we've seen so much progress in the last, let's say, 6 to 12 months in AI, in software, is because that exact reason. You can take that principle and I can write an algorithm that trains an AI to do that because you can reduce the whole thing, all of software engineering, true or false. Yeah. Okay. So I would say fields where that's the case will change dramatically. But what's not obvious to me right now is how many fields are actually like that.
Yeah.
So certainly math, certainly coding. That's interesting. But what about writing a legal brief? Is that true or false? Can you binarize that? Or what about a sales pitch on a call or a door? There are probably 100 different ways that you could do the sales pitch well. There's probably 10,000 ways you could do it poorly, but it's almost impossible to turn it into a single true false.
And just to be clear, what we're talking about is like the anxiety people feel of, I won't have a job because an AI is so good at something. And what you're saying is there are some fields that may be more susceptible, although we're going to talk here in a second about Jenkins paradox.
Yeah.
There are some fields where people think, well, my entire job is a true or false output. Like, so I'm a software engineer. Everything that I do comes down to, did the program run or did it not? And in theory, that's a susceptible field, potentially to major disruption in AI. This is like a lot of white collar jobs, like accounting, forecasting. But you're also saying that there are fields where it doesn't boil down to a true or false.
I'd say most fields I don't think do.
Most fields
are somewhat subjective. There's lots of different plausible solutions to any given problem, and therefore can't fully be automated with the current technology that we have.
Okay, so I feel like anyone listening can take a breath because
I agree 100%. Even in software, where I'm saying that's maybe the most susceptible to this pattern, what are all the software engineers doing? A lot of them are excited.
Yeah.
Because they can automate parts of their workflow that they didn't even like doing.
Yes.
And even in this idea of turning a problem into true false, there's small parts of software that you can easily do that. Did the program execute correctly? Yes or no? But what's an app? An app is a collection of hundreds or thousands of programs, okay? And then also you have to think about how does it interact with my servers? Yeah. Where do my servers live? You need to test everything. And so you have this actually really big ecosystem where within that ecosystem, pieces of it are true or false, falsifiable, but the whole thing is not. And so even in software engineering, I think it's fairly low probability that we can automate the entire thing end to end.
Yeah. Okay. So the other piece to this within software engineering is there's the element of product market fit. So what does your app do? Who does it serve? What's its mission?
Totally.
That is not a true or false verifiable
Absolutely.
thing.
What to build. That's the hardest part.
Yeah.
And that's not, I don't think you can make that into a true false dichotomy either.
And the other element, I know we've talked about this a lot, is taste, the feel of the app. It's like everyone can make food at their house, but yet I still have to go to Chipotle, because I love it so much. I have to take my wife to dinner. If I make my wife food at my house, it doesn't feel the same. And so I think that there's opportunity for software to still exist at a greater scale.
Yeah, and so if we continue with the software example, certainly it's the frictions are being removed to produce it. The cost is going down to produce it.
Yes.
We could talk about Jenkins paradox
in a minute.
Yes,
yeah.
But also that makes the humanity of it even more important.
Yeah.
So what to build?
Yeah.
How does it impact people? How to sell it?
Yeah.
Selling of the software right now, and maybe the sales and marketing of the software, maybe is more important than the actual production of the software. So these parts of this technical field that really touch humanity are, I think, more important than ever.
So, okay, I love that. I love that so much, and we're going to stop and dwell. We're going to do the old Hunter stop and dwell, because I feel like this is so important. Parts of software that touch the human element are probably going to be the most important parts, because the technical parts are becoming easier to build. right? And so for those who think to themselves, man, I'm not gifted in the technical space, or like, I don't love math, I don't love statistics. Like, what you're saying is get really good at the human connection part of this, and you can still be in this massive AI revolution.
Totally. Learn the tools. You don't have to learn all the fancy math or anything.
Yeah.
Learn the tools and figure out how they impact people.
Yeah.
How they make their lives better, how to sell them.
Yeah.
And I think there's massive opportunity there.
So I don't want to hear online, bro, we're cooked again. Okay. Nobody say, bro, we're cooked, because we're not. Like, and I feel really strongly about this. Like, I feel like it's so exciting. And I'm a guy who's a software guy who, like you said, the parts that I hated most about my job, and I love software, are automated. Like the boilerplate stuff, it's all gone.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, what problems can we solve, and how can we mass distribute those solutions?
Totally. And again, if you look back at history, like this has happened many times. There's a good kind of Milton Friedman anecdote. He was an economist, kind of the 60s, 70s, 80s, where he was at a job site, for a government jobs program, and they were building something, and they had this big photo op, and they were starting to dig and excavate using shovels. And Milton Friedman, who's an economist, like, why are you using shovels? And then so one of the reporters said, well, we thought if we gave them power equipment, then there'd be fewer jobs. And this is a jobs program. And he said, well, why don't you just give them spoons if you want to create jobs? And so I think that's kind of where we're at. That's the analogy is,
wow,
these AI systems are tools. They're going to make us more productive. If we're building buildings, building skyscrapers, we want power machinery. We want cranes. We want excavators. We don't want spoons.
Yeah.
And so we have to have a fixed, not a fixed pie mindset, but a growth mindset, that the whole pie of things that we can do individually and collectively as a society are going to massively grow. And AI is going to unlock that, I think.
Oh, I love that, man. Gosh, it's not a fixed pie mindset. It's a growth mindset. Like, everyone can get in on this, and the demand for software is going to go up. There's going to be more apps. The apps are going to be better. Everything's going to be better. There's going to be more jobs. So and
that's just software. And I think it's going to percolate through the entire economy.
Yeah, we are talking a lot about software. Porter and I are both passionate about software. But the last thing to touch on this is Jevons paradox.
Yeah, so this is a fascinating kind of corollary from basic economics. It basically just says, as the cost to produce a good goes down, so as things become cheaper to produce, you can produce more of it, and that actually raises the aggregate demand of that good, because the cost is coming down. Then more people would be willing to buy it.
Yeah.
Obviously, as price increases, I'm sensitive to that, and I want to buy it less. As the price decreases, I like that, and I want to buy it more. So as the cost to produce something comes down, its price comes down, and then more people will want it. So that's the idea of Jevons paradox. And with software, we're actually seeing that in real time. Clearly, it's becoming easier to produce software, cheaper. And so, all the people who are paranoid, living in a state of, AI paranoia, are predicting all the software jobs are going to zero. Bro, we're cooked.
Basically. Yeah, bro, we're cooked.
But actually, if you look at the Federal Reserve data, and I've been looking at this almost every day for the last month, software engineering jobs are up year over year by like 25%.
Yeah,
they're the highest they've been kind of since the COVID bubble. And so, in spite of massively disruptive technology shifts, I mean, software engineers, their job has fundamentally changed in the last 3 months, more than any other time since punch cards, basically.
Wow.
And in spite of that technological shift, there's more demand for software engineering jobs. So in contrast to fewer jobs, we're seeing more jobs. One more anecdote along those lines. About 10 years ago, one of the most famous AI scientists named Jeff Hinton, who won the Nobel Prize in Physics last year for his work on the backpropagation algorithm. Brilliant guy, the most important scientist in the history of AI. He basically predicted in 2016 that within 10 years, there would be no radiologists, because at that time, AI was getting really, really good at understanding image data.
And that's a true or false, like, has cancer, has not cancer.
Exactly. It's verifiable, we would say. It's binary. So he's like, clearly there's a lot of data. We could turn it into true false. Ipso facto, 10 years, we're going to automate everything, and there's going to be no radiologists. We've made a lot of progress. Those AI models are really good. But now if you look at the total number of radiologists in America, it's up massively from 10 years ago.
Wow.
For the same exact reason.
Wow.
Because now we can just scan more stuff. We can medical images are cheaper to analyze. Before, you had to have a doctor, a very expensive doctor, sit down and look at the images manually. Now he can sit down and review 20 of them that have been pre-labeled by AI, and then he can just basically make the final decision.
Yes.
And now we can scan way more. So there's more radiologists, there's more demand, even though the cost of doing the image scan has gone down. So that's the idea of Jevons paradox.
Because, okay, the efficiency of that allows for the demand to increase, which we're not worried about jobs being taken over because like human beings are still in the loop. And I think this is another pattern here that we find, like even in software, there's something about having a human in the loop. With the radiologist, there's something about having a human in the loop. And so I think the message for people is, well, how do you be that human in the loop, right? It's not that your job isn't going to change. It will. Maybe even some jobs like rapidly transform in a way that they're unrecognizable, but leveraging the tools in a way that you are the human in the loop, right? And I think for the younger kids listening, it's about courage. Like, don't be afraid of it. Go towards it. Like, the future's very bright, right?
Yeah, optimism in the face of uncertainty.
Yeah,
like these are uncertain times, and you're not going to make the perfect decision every time. But I think if you make a choice that has, high risk and high reward, you're going to learn and you're going to figure things out as you go.
So, are there decisions that in that framework of this upper confidence bound, which I love this might be my favorite book title. Like, I mean that. This is awesome. Are there some decisions that are disproportionately risky? Or is it just if you correlate it with value, as long as the value's high?
So what you don't want to do in this framework is basically choose something that has kind of low expected value and risky.
Yeah, okay. So like a great example is like, don't go put your savings on like 00 on the roulette board.
Yeah, sure. So that's great. Don't go put your life savings in Vegas. Why? That has risk. And so I'm telling you should take risks, right? That has risk, but it has low expected value.
Okay, so you gotta try to calculate the expected value.
High expected value and high risk.
Okay.
If you do that consistently, then mathematically we can prove that you'll minimize regret over your lifetime. That's literally what the theorem says. You can minimize regret.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. It is ironic because I am wearing a
there you go.
Raise the Stakes shirt today, so that's cool. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about being an entrepreneur now, because we've like dug into your journey about going to school. We've covered having a mentor to push you to new heights is a good thing. We've talked about imposter syndrome, that it's healthy in the right microdose. We've talked a lot about AI in terms of like what it is, what it isn't, what it's good at, what it's not good at. And I love the upper confidence bound. I love this so much. Now let's talk about starting a business. Let's talk about being an entrepreneur, working in startups. What's your experience been like? What's your advice to somebody who wants to go out and start their own thing?
Well, being an entrepreneur is really hard. That's mainly my opinion. And in the crazy genius matrix, I think I'm still in the crazy part because I don't think I've figured it all out by any means. So my experience with being an entrepreneur is primarily around a couple of efforts. Mainly Delicious AI. We could talk about that. That's kind of the most mature story so far. So that company was started in 2019. And the whole goal was to bring AI to the real world, into grocery stores, and shed light on what's happening in grocery stores for retailers. So we've partnered with some really big beverage distributors to help build out this technology. And the technology is cool. You basically take out your phone, you can scan a shelf. It uses images. It uses LiDAR, which are lasers that shoot out from the phone and come back and create this 3D model right there on your phone. And then we used AI to figure out what's there. We use AI to figure out what's selling. And then we would use AI to recommend to these people, to the users, what to put there. And so that was the original vision of Delicious AI, and we've been going on it about 6 years. And I think, to be honest, the success has been sort of mixed. I mean, we've built entire products that we thought were awesome. We launched them, and then we couldn't sell them.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, I know that there's some serious intellectual power of Delicious AI. And you're saying you built products and you can sell them. Like, walk somebody through who thinks they have a great technical idea. Like, how do you validate that that's a good idea in the market before you go out to sell?
Well, yeah. I mean, maybe the mistake that we made was we didn't fail fast.
Okay.
So I think, if you start a business, if you're an entrepreneur, you're going to fail.
Yes.
Without question.
Yes.
Now, the question is, when you fail, what's going to be your response? Can you keep going? And how fast can you fail? And there's a ton of value in failing fast, because the thing that you think is awesome in your head when you start is probably not the thing that people actually want. And so you have to go through this refinement process of trying stuff out, experimenting, seeing, releasing something and seeing what works and what doesn't. And first, if your first thing flops and you quit, then you're out of the game and you're done.
So you
need to be a little more courageous and keep pushing, because it takes several iterations.
And I think what I discern as well is there's a correlation potentially to success to how long your feedback process is.
Exactly. That's what I mean by fail fast. So if you have a product and you're incubating in your mind and you're building it, or you spend years. If you spend years building it until it's perfect, that's a bad way to go, I think. Because what you think is perfect is unlikely to be the thing that the market actually wants. And so rather than having a fully baked product over several years, it's better to have like maybe a slightly half-baked product that you can whip out in a couple months and be a little bit more incremental in this feedback loop that you described. So that's what I mean by fail fast, because if that half-baked thing isn't perfect, I don't think the fully baked thing is going to be perfect either. So you might as well fail fast and get feedback and then improve it for the next cycle.
And I think part of that has got to come from not being defensive when you're trying to fail fast.
Totally.
So you have an idea, you think it's great, you go talk to 10 people and you get ripped to shreds. It's very easy to be defensive. And I think welcoming that and having really thick skin is like really important. I always say, like, whenever I talk to people about product, I'm like, hey, I need you to just tell me everything you hate. I actually don't really, like, I want to know what you like, but I really, really want to know what you hate, right? So yeah, I think failing fast is great.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think, I talked about my PhD. That was one lesson I learned, because it's the same process. If you think that your idea is awesome and you just hold on to it for too long, then you go out into the market, which is peer review. Everyone is going to tell you how bad it is. So you might as well do that fast. And, you got to be a little humble, because if you're too prideful and you can't take feedback, you're going to lose.
What about like surrounding yourself with friends who give you candid feedback? Do you feel like that's been a valuable tool you've used?
Yeah, totally. I mean, there's no way you can do it all on your own. You need a couple of really great opinions to kind of triangulate on the truth. And so having good partners, good friends who can give you feedback is really valuable. And, one bias people have often is if you go to your friend and say, hey, is this thing any good? They're going to be inclined to tell you what you want to hear. And so you need to find friends, you need to find people, maybe they're not even friends, who just will give you unfiltered feedback. And so that's what the market is really good at.
Yeah.
Market is just brutally honest.
Yeah, because you just mimic the market with a closer circle in a way that, like, the cost is low, so failing fast is easier. Okay, I mean, I think as I kind of draw on this upper confidence bound idea, there's so many great action items to take here, guys. Like, picking the thing that's most valuable, discerning what value is, understanding what's uncertain, and still going for it is such a good framework. And even though AI might seem scary, there's a lot of reason to have a lot of ambition right now. So I don't ever want to feel from people like the future is bleak, because I think it's really bright. Now, maybe let me ask you this question to end here. It's kind of hypothetical. But let's picture that you're on a stage. There's thousands of people that are watching you, and you have a chance to address them, to impact them, to help shape them. What's the one idea that you would give them?
Yeah, that's a good question. I just think I would try and instill on them this idea that, life is an adventure. You're not going to live it perfectly. No one ever has. You're not going to make the right decision all the time. But if you're trying your best and you're taking some risks, life is probably going to be much better than it would be otherwise. And so I would just say, implement this idea of optimism in the face of uncertainty. Take risks, try new things, push yourself. Don't compare yourself to others. Compare yourself to who you were yesterday. And if you keep pushing that over time, you're going to be a better person.
I love that. Yeah, I think fear is the biggest limiting factor. Fear
is the mind killer, as they say in Dune.
Fear is the mind killer, and that might be the perfect place to end. So don't be afraid of the future. Be bold, be courageous. And Porter, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Hermano.